my God, thank you. He dragged me out of the place and I fought so hard because I was like, this is how you die.
A 26-year-old Donald Trump supporter and cryptocurrency enthusiast named Anthony Bravo received the disappointment of a lifetime on a Monday in early 2025 when he awoke to learn that more than $800,000 worth of Trump coin was missing from his crypto wallet. Adding to the alarming discovery was the fact that his girlfriend of 6 months, 22-year-old Mahsa Jabali, had apparently fled their shared house yacht with his American Express card, which she had used to pay for an accommodation elsewhere. News outlets learned of the alleged theft after Bravo filed a report with the Miami police. According to the complaint, the missing cryptocurrency had been transferred to a wallet that Bravo didn't recognize, leading to the suspicion that Jabali had attempted to pocket the virtual coin for herself. Speaking with Local 10 News, Bravo said that he and Jabali had fought the night before Jabali split. In his efforts to track her down, he hired a private investigator who discovered that the Tunisian national had overstayed her visa. The investigator informed police of the young woman's whereabouts at a local hostel, and officers paid her a visit. Court documents state that Jabali called Bravo a loser and said that he lets her use his credit card. She's currently in the custody of federal immigration authorities and has not been charged in connection with the stolen crypto, leaving Bravo and his private investigator worried that she'll be deported before police can complete their investigation into the case. In the meantime, Jabali faces felony charges for grand theft and unauthorized use of a credit card. Number 24. Kevin Horswill. 52-year-old Richard Langley's agonizing final moments were captured in a chilling audio recording as he begged for his life while being strangled to death with his own clothing on March 18th of 2024. He perished in his own front yard in Essex, England, at the hands of 51-year-old Kevin Horswill, following an altercation at a nearby pub. In the recording, which was captured by a neighbor, Langley could be heard repeatedly yelling, "Get off me!" before he suddenly went silent. He succumbed to his injuries during the early morning hours and Horswill was charged with his murder. Horswill claimed he had acted in self-defense after following Langley home in an apparent search for a fight, but witnesses testified that the defendant had yelled, "You're a dead man!" before the fatal confrontation. Prosecutors argued that this reflected an intent to kill, and the jury ultimately agreed. Despite his claims of innocence, Horswill was found guilty of murder in early 2025 and sentenced to a minimum of 18 years in prison. Number 23. Robbery victim turns the tables. In early 2025, footage of a 78-year-old retiree shooting a teenage thief during an attempted robbery in Buenos Aires, Argentina, went viral. In the video, the teen and his friends could be seen pulling up next to the senior citizen as he exited his vehicle. Before the passing car even came to a stop, the young man jumped out and pointed what looked like a gun at the old man, who swiftly pulled a .357 Magnum pistol and shot at the sticky-fingered adolescent multiple times. The teen collapsed onto the ground and his friends sped off, leaving him to die on the pavement from gunshot wounds to the head and chest. Further investigation revealed that the adolescent had threatened the elderly gentleman with a toy gun that was designed to resemble a real weapon. The local prosecutor declined to pursue charges against the octogenarian, who is a licensed gun owner, after determining that he had fired his weapon out of a legitimate fear for his life. Number 22. George Davis. Shatika Yates awoke to a living nightmare at her Forest, Michigan home on a Monday in February of 2018. Her boyfriend and the father of her young child, 22-year-old Hamon Thomas, was repeatedly yelling, "I'm your cousin," as 27-year-old parolee George Anthony Davis stormed through the couple's house with a gun. Yates overheard 2 gunshots and retreated to the attic with her daughter, where she waited in sheer terror as she prayed for Davis to leave. After hearing him exit the house and seeing him drive away from the scene, she finally felt safe enough to come out of hiding. She found Thomas gasping for air on the floor and called emergency responders, who rushed the young man to the hospital. Thomas died from his injuries, making him the 4th and final victim of a murderous rampage that began a short while earlier at a nearby gas station, where Davis had killed the mother of his child, 24-year-old Sierra Barganier, Barganier's father, 60-year-old Deacon Raphael Hall, and their neighbor, 21-year-old Kristen Thomas. The trio were traveling together in the same vehicle and had stopped at the gas station to fuel up when they were killed. According to relatives, Davis had started acting irrationally paranoid about a week before the murders. He was reportedly hallucinating, questioning the paternity of his child, and had even gone to his own mother's house. with plans to kill her, but she wasn't home at the time. Davis had recently checked himself into a psychiatric unit due to his disturbing thoughts, according to family members, who said that he may have suspected Barganier of cheating on him with his cousin Hammond. After killing the 4 victims, Davis drove to Ohio, where he got into a shootout with state police. He was rushed to a hospital outside Toledo in critical condition, where he later died from a gunshot wound. Number 21. Marcus Randle L. Shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning, on Monday, February 10th, 2020, the mortally wounded bodies of 27-year-old Brittany McAdory and 30-year-old Sierra Winchester were found along a roadside in Janesville, Wisconsin. The women were pronounced dead at a nearby hospital, and the accused killer, 33-year-old Marcus Randle L., turned himself in at a Chicago police station shortly thereafter. According to police, the victims had plans to meet with L., a former University of Wisconsin football player and brother to former Pittsburgh Steelers star Antoine Randle L. Later that morning, the former Badger was accused of lying in wait near the murder scene, then stealing McAdory's vehicle, which was later found abandoned in Justice, Illinois. L. had ditched the car after running out of fuel and was subsequently seen with blood on himself by a witness who drove him to a nearby gas station. During L's trial in early 2023, prosecutors argued that he killed Winchester because he suspected her of being a police informant, and that he killed McAdory to eliminate her as a witness. The defense denied the allegations while calling the prosecution out for failing to produce a murder weapon, DNA evidence, or witnesses connecting L to the double homicide. L, who had been free on bond throughout the proceedings, continued to deny responsibility for the crime even after being found guilty by a jury, blurting out, "I didn't do this," initially refusing to allow deputies to escort him into custody. He surrendered at the urging of family members and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, with the possibility of parole after serving 30 years in each case. 60 years total. He'll be in his mid-90s if he lives to see his first chance at freedom, in which case parole could still be denied. In other words, it seems more likely than not that L will die behind bars, even if he survives into old age. Number 20. Emiliano Sala. Argentine professional soccer player Emiliano Raul Sala Tafarel had just signed a record-breaking multi-million-dollar contract when he was killed in a plane crash on Monday, January 21st, 2019, during a flight from the French city of Nantes to Cardiff, Wales. An intensive search for the missing footballer was launched after the Piper Malibu aircraft that he was traveling on failed to arrive at its destination as planned. The vanished plane was found roughly 2 weeks after it disappeared over the English Channel, by which point authorities had given up all hope of there being any survivors. After publicly funded searches failed to turn up any sign of the aircraft, donations poured in for private searches, resulting in the plane's discovery at a depth of 205 feet. Sala's body was recovered from inside the wrecked vehicle and sent to Argentina for a proper burial by his loved ones, who laid him to rest in his hometown of Progreso. Evidence from the wreckage revealed that the aircraft descended at a rate of 7,000 feet per minute for roughly 15 seconds before it plunged into the English Channel. The plane broke apart into 3 pieces before coming to rest on the seafloor, and an autopsy revealed, perhaps not surprisingly, that Sala perished from head and chest injuries. The ill-fated flight had been arranged by the tragically deceased athlete's former agent, Willie McKay, who accused Cardiff City Football Club of abandoning Sala at a hotel and leaving him on his own to arrange his travel back to Wales from France. The football club adamantly denied the allegation, arguing that WhatsApp messages between Sala and a Cardiff City employee proved that he was not abandoned. Like McKay had claimed, Sala's death remained mired in controversy as investigators sought to determine whether anyone was at fault for his untimely demise. According to authorities, the plane was not licensed for commercial use and no one had applied for the proper permit to fly it commercially. Based on the investigation's findings, a pilot named David Henderson was arrested on suspicion of manslaughter for his role in arranging the flight. He was reportedly supposed to fly the aircraft prior to a last-minute change in plans, and no further legal action was taken against him following his initial arrest. Recordings from the plane's black box revealed that the pilot, David Ibbotson, had described it as dodgy and said he planned to wear his life jacket prior to the deadly plunge. He knew firsthand that the plane was problematic due to issues during a past flight, indicating that he went against his better judgment in his decision to make that final tragic crossing. Number 19. Victoria Taylor. 34-year-old British mother of one, Victoria Taylor, was last seen leaving her home in Malton, North Yorkshire, on a Monday morning in late September of 2024. Her fiancé, Matthew, knew that she would never leave him or their young daughter behind, so it didn't take long for him to start fearing the worst when Taylor failed to return home. The situation became even more urgent after Taylor's belongings were found abandoned along the banks of the River Derwent. Her whereabouts remained a mystery for 3 weeks before divers located her body near the site where her belongings had been discarded. Nothing seemed amiss in gas station footage from the day of Taylor's disappearance, or video that was captured at a bus station shortly before noon. The last known footage of Taylor was captured at around past noon as she walked along the water's edge toward a children's play area. Taylor was likely unaware of the fate she would soon face, based on the findings of a provisional inquest, which ruled her death an accidental drowning. Authorities did not go into detail about how they believe Taylor ended up in the water, including whether she fell in or perhaps got swept away by the current after stepping into the river for some reason. A formal coroner's inquest had yet to take place when the provisional cause of death was announced, but police have ruled out the possibility of foul play. Number 18. David Maine. 4 members of a Prince William County, Virginia household were murdered in cold blood on Monday, October 17th, 2022, at the hands of their housemate, 24-year-old David Nathaniel Maine. The deaths were described as some of the most gruesome fatalities ever witnessed by local authorities. The victims were identified as 42-year-old Kelly Victoria Sotelo, who was the mother of Maine's ex-boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend's stepfather, 44-year-old Miguel Duran Flores, the ex's sister, 19-year-old Carrie A-Line Sotelo, and a downstairs tenant, 36-year-old Richard Julio Jesus Revoya Corrales. All 4 victims were Peruvian immigrants who had relocated to the United States in search of a prosperous future. They lived in the household with 3 other individuals, including Maine and Kelly Sotelo's 2 other children, who survived the quadruple murder. One of the survivors was Maine's ex-boyfriend, 26-year-old Jimmy Inga. The pair had broken up after dating for 4 years, but Maine had continued to rent a room in the home. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Maine had reportedly started making racist remarks toward his housemates and keeping guns inside the residence, putting fellow household members on edge. He also became increasingly volatile, at one point punching a hole in the wall because he felt the family was being too loud during a birthday party. Roughly 2 weeks before the killings, Inga told Maine that he needed to move out by the end of the month. Instead of realizing that the living arrangement wasn't working out and looking for a new place, Maine threatened to beat Inga's mother and stepfather to death. After fatally shooting the victims later that month, Maine dialed 911 and claimed that an unknown Hispanic male had entered the home and shot everyone up while he was playing video games. But Inga was quick to tell police about Maine's threatening behavior, and he was promptly taken into custody. In January 2025, Maine pleaded guilty to 10 felony charges, including 4 counts of first-degree murder, 3 gun-related counts, abduction, and more. He's currently awaiting sentencing, which is scheduled for August 21st, and is facing a potential lifetime behind bars. Number 17. Elizabeth Pollard. In one of the more unusual listings on today's video, a Pennsylvania grandmother died in late 2024 after being swallowed alive by a sinkhole in Union Township. 64-year-old Elizabeth Pollard was looking for her pet cat when the ground gave way beneath her feet less than 20 feet away from her vehicle, where her granddaughter was sitting at the time of the freak tragedy. The hole opened up above the site of an abandoned mine, causing Pollard to plunge roughly 30 feet to her death. Community members and law enforcement began to search for the missing woman after finding her granddaughter all alone in the car, where she was cold but physically unharmed. After concluding that Pollard had most likely fallen into the hole, crews spent 4 days removing dirt from the opening while hoping for the best but expecting the worst. They eventually recovered Pollard's body using machinery due to concerns about the possibility of another deadly collapse, and were all but certain that they were searching for a body rather than a survivor. The dismal prediction turned out to be correct, and an autopsy found that Pollard had died from blunt force injuries from the impact of the fall. Her cat, Pepper, was never found, but the feline was reportedly seen around town weeks after the collapse, indicating that the cat was not swallowed by the sinkhole. Police appreciated the curiosity surrounding Pepper's well-being, but advised members of the public not to approach the cat, who they said was doing fine but wanted to be left alone. Number 16. Denroy Garcia. A young Chicago father gave up his vehicle to carjackers without a fight when he was ambushed in 2020, but the thieves decided to kill him anyway. 33-year-old Shuai Guan was checking his mail outside his home in the city's Bridgeport neighborhood at around 6:30 p.m. on a Monday evening when his assailants approached in 2 stolen cars. The thieves demanded Guan's vehicle and he readily handed over the key. He cautiously backed away from the scene and was talking to a 911 operator in an alleyway when one of the suspects fired a single fatal shot in his direction. Officers arrived at the scene to find Guan lying face up on the ground with his pants pockets turned out. Guan's widow, Hong Yi Bai, later told CBS 2's Jermont Terry that she immediately knew something was wrong when she arrived home and saw police surrounding her husband's vehicle. She was already aware that something bad had happened based on a call she had received from her father telling her to come home. And she prayed that Guan was alive after she saw the commotion outside their home and realized he had been targeted in a violent crime. Guan's murder occurred during an alarming uptick in carjackings across Chicago and the US in general, where vehicle thefts spiked during the COVID-19 pandemic in a city plagued by gun violence. This naturally amounted to a coinciding increase in murders. The suspects who attempted to steal Guan's car never ended up taking it because they apparently couldn't figure out how to put it into drive. The accused shooter, Denroy Garcia, was captured hours after the shooting and was charged as an adult despite his young age at the time of the murder due to the severity of the crime. According to prosecutors, Garcia had participated in several other carjackings and other violent crimes in the weeks prior to Guan's death. In fact, he had stolen one of the vehicles that were used to swarm Guan just 2 minutes before the shooting, and its owner had left it running and unlocked. In 2023, the teen pleaded guilty to murder during the commission of a forcible felony. The judge sentenced him to 27.5 years in prison with the requirement to serve 100% of his term behind bars. Garcia was also ordered to seek higher education and receive mental health services during the nearly 3 decades he'll be spending in state custody. Number 15. Jay Slater. A British couple experienced a parent's worst nightmare in June of 2024 when their teenage son vanished during a vacation to the Spanish party island of Tenerife. 19-year-old Jay Slater was last seen leaving a property in Parque Rural de Treño on foot on a Monday morning after missing his bus back to his resort in the more populated town of Los Cristianos. He had attended a music festival in the island's southern region the previous day. The next bus wasn't scheduled to arrive for 2 more hours, so he began the 11-hour trek the old-fashioned way. Sometime during his attempt to reach civilization, Slater called a friend and said that he had gotten lost. He said he was thirsty, had cut his leg on a cactus, and had just 1% battery left on his phone, making it clear that he was in a perilous predicament. The friend called the police and a search was launched in an effort to find the missing and seemingly disoriented teen, whose phone last pinged somewhere north of the cabin he had set out from earlier that day. In the meantime, Slater's family boarded the next available flight to the Canary Islands so they could help look for him. Law enforcement scaled back its involvement in the search after 12 days, but Slater's loved ones continued searching. In mid-July, nearly a month after he vanished, his remains were found near the location where his phone had last pinged. He had fallen into a ravine and landed among difficult terrain, making it impossible for him to reach safety and requiring the use of a helicopter to recover his body. Slater hadn't made it terribly far before his journey went awry, leading to speculation that his judgment and thinking had been clouded by drug use during the music festival. According to a medical examiner's report, he died from broken bones and blunt force injuries that were sustained during the fall. Like many other infamous disappearances, Slater's case was plagued by controversy and conspiracy theories. Many people criticized the police for what they believed as an inadequate investigation and search, and law enforcement was also accused of overlooking many of the basics in terms of their search methods and the leads they dismissed and chose to follow. Even after the recovery of Slater's remains, his mother claimed that she was being trolled relentlessly by anonymous online bullies and prank callers. There were also numerous fake crowdfunding pages claiming to raise money for the search effort, but none of the money went toward its stated purpose. The chaos surrounding Slater's untimely death seems to have quieted down in the nearly 2 years since he vanished, which has hopefully finally given his family an opportunity to focus on grieving. Number 14. Donovan Lee Mann. A Texas teenager named Eugene Sonny Brownlow was ruthlessly gunned down by one of his peers outside a Killeen, convenience store on a Monday morning in May of 2023, leaving one young man dead and another facing a potential lifelong prison sentence. Responding officers arrived at the scene at around 10 o'clock a.m., where they found 3 male victims suffering from gunshot wounds, including Brownlow. All 3 victims were airlifted to the emergency room, where Brownlow died from his injuries shortly before 1 in the afternoon, while the 2 surviving victims were stabilized. The U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force arrested the accused killer, 19-year-old Donovan Lee Mann, in Bell County a full week after the shooting. Mann was taken into custody without incident and remained in county lockup for the next year before pleading guilty to a first-degree murder charge. Mann's infant child was brought into the courtroom during his sentencing hearing in June of 2024 in hopes that he would get an opportunity to hold the baby for the first time before being hauled off to prison. His defense attorney made the request after the judge imposed a 35-year term, and the judge denied the request, citing a policy of not allowing defendants to touch civilians once their sentence has been handed down. The seemingly unsympathetic judge plainly stated, "That's my policy and I'm not changing it today." And Mann was escorted out of the courtroom to begin his new life as a convicted murderer. While 35 years may seem like a long time for a father to go without having any physical contact with his child, Mann's plea deal seemed too forgiving to Brownlow's mother, who told the Killeen Daily Herald that she was uncomfortable with the agreement but that she didn't think it mattered. During a victim impact statement, she mentioned how Mann had asked to hold his child when she would never get the opportunity to hold hers again, and she described the sentence as little justice for the cold-blooded murder of her son. Number 13. Sanel St. Simon. 16-year-old Alexandra Cherry vanished seemingly into thin air in Orange County, Florida, after being last seen alive on a Monday morning in July of 2014. Cherry was reported missing by her mother, who told police she had returned home from work to find her daughter's clothing and bedding removed from the Orlando area residence. Cherry's mother also recalled that her daughter was still in bed when she last saw the teen at around 7 a.m. that day, leaving her clueless regarding where her daughter had gone in the hours since. Cherry's bedroom smelled like bleach, and a pair of men's underwear had been found under her bed, prompting investigators to take a closer look at her mother's boyfriend, Sanel St. Simon. As the search for Cherry continued, prosecutors charged St. Simon with attempting to destroy evidence and giving false information. In the meantime, he remained on law enforcement's radar as a prime suspect in the case. Investigators' suspicions were further heightened after they learned that St. Simon had done something to make Cherry uncomfortable shortly before she went missing. Several days after Cherry disappeared, her body was found in a wooded area in neighboring Osceola County. She had suffered blunt force injuries to the head, including multiple skull fractures. Her remains were too decomposed to determine a specific cause of death, but the case was ruled a homicide, and St. Simon was charged with first-degree murder. He maintained his innocence throughout his court proceedings, but was nevertheless found guilty of murder, aggravated child abuse, and making false statements to law enforcement. The convicted killer received an automatic life sentence without parole for the murder charge, along with 15 and 5-year sentences for his other convictions. During his sentencing hearing, St. Simon offered some confusing and arguably half-hearted words of remorse, apologizing for what had happened while claiming in the same breath that he didn't know what happened. He also referred to Cherry as his daughter and claimed that he carried pain over the incident while failing to outright admit to his guilt. Number 12. The kidnapping of Jane Priebe. A Las Vegas woman named Jane Priebe was stalked for more than a year by her ex-boyfriend before he acted on a sinister and carefully premeditated plan to kidnap her on a Monday in January of 2017. Neighbors described seeing the 28-year-old being dragged out of her apartment while bound and gagged at the hands of 2 individuals who were later identified as 31-year-old Jack Morgan and his companion, 19-year-old Samuel Brown, also known as Sophie Brown. Prosecutors would later accuse Morgan of going door-to-door in Priebe's apartment building until he found the victim. He subdued Priebe with a stun gun and choked her unconscious before dragging her outside. Priebe's captors forced her into a white van and drove south to New Mexico, where police identified the vehicle in question and enacted a traffic stop 12 hours after the young woman's abduction from her home. Law enforcement had tracked Brown's cell phone signal, enabling the authorities to prevent the suspects from following through with their twisted intentions. Harrowing dashcam footage of Priebe's rescue captured the moment officers reassured her that they were going to get her out of the van and take her to safety.
Oh my God, thank you. He dragged me out of the place and I fought so hard because I was like, this is how you die.
The relief in her voice was instant, despite still being handcuffed and chained in the back of the vehicle. Priebe later told investigators that Morgan and Brown told her they were going to imprison her in a cave, where Morgan planned to brainwash her into wanting to marry him. The two had dated in college years earlier, but had long since cut ties. Federal prosecutors charged the suspects for their roles in the abduction, which spanned 3 states. Brown took a plea deal and received a 63-month sentence followed by 5 years of supervised release. Morgan took his case to trial and was found guilty, resulting in a life sentence without parole. Number 11. Madelyn Allen. 19-year-old Madelyn Allen disappeared after leaving her college dorm in Ephraim, Utah, shortly before 9:30 p.m. on a Monday night in December 2021. Her roommates reported her missing the following day after she failed to return. 5 days after Allen vanished, police rescued her from the basement of a Wayne County home, where she had been held against her will by a man she had met in a KIK group chat, later identified as 39-year-old Brent Brown. Allen's unemployed captor had taken her phone away after picking her up for what started as a voluntary meetup. At some point, the interactions became violent and non-consensual. Little was known about Brown at the time of his arrest, other than the fact that he had a concerning history of arrests, including a prior charge for witness tampering in an unrelated case. The accused kidnapper also had an active warrant for his arrest at the time of Allen's rescue, resulting in a judge's decision to detain him without bail while additional charges were forthcoming. In July of 2024, Brown pleaded no contest to felony charges of kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and forcible abuse. During a court hearing, Allen testified that she believed she was going to die during her nearly week-long captivity. Meanwhile, the defendant insisted he was a changed person and would not repeat his actions. The judge sentenced Brown to 2 concurrent terms of 1 to 15 years in prison, followed by a consecutive term of 0 to 5 years. Number 10. Jordan Dove. In early 2025, a South Carolina man was killed after accidentally coming into contact with a booby trap that had been placed by a family member. 34-year-old Jordan Dove unintentionally shot himself when he encountered the device at his incarcerated uncle's vacant home in St. Matthews. He succumbed to his injuries on a Monday evening after being rushed to a nearby hospital. A law enforcement spokesperson revealed that the home had been carefully secured after police made a very careful and calculated approach, fearing that the residence was rigged with additional booby traps. They disabled the trap that had killed Dove, and authorities are reportedly working to bring murder charges against the homeowner, Alfonso Brown, who's currently serving time at a Maryland state prison for an unrelated non-fatal shooting. Investigators believe Brown rigged the home with the specific intention of harming members of law enforcement. He's reportedly facing a weapon-related charge for his DIY home security system, and more charges could be forthcoming. Number 9. Stacey Dramiga. On Monday, September 23, 2024, the brutally slain body of 63-year-old Stacey Dramiga was found in a wooded area along a popular walking trail in San Antonio, Texas. Her remains bore obvious signs of a beating and had been dragged to the site, making it clear that she had met with foul play. The medical examiner ruled her cause of death as blunt force and penetrating trauma to the head. Dramiga was an avid hiker who frequented the Salado Creek Greenway Trail, where her body was found, and other nearby nature paths. Her husband reported her missing the day before her remains were discovered, when she failed to return home from one of her regular walks. Police located the missing woman by pinging her cell phone, which was found close to her body. 3 days after Dramiga was found dead, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office arrested a 38-year-old repeat offender named Marco Flores. According to authorities, Flores was uncooperative when law enforcement located him near the crime scene and attempted to question him about Dramiga's death. He has a lengthy criminal history consisting of at least 6 prior bookings over a 7-year period, including 5 previous trespassing charges and 1 drug possession charge. Flores was charged with evading arrest and detention but does not currently appear to be in custody. According to the most recent available updates on the case, he remains a person of interest, but no one has been charged in connection with Dramiga's murder. A $5,000 Crime Stoppers reward is being offered for information leading to the arrest of a suspect, and law enforcement has reassured the public that they are not going to tolerate the type of horrific violence that Dramiga suffered during her final moments. Number 8. Georgios Kakavelos. 22-year-old Elizabeth Lamont was never seen alive again after going to her job at a deli in Johnstown, New York, on October 28, 2019. 3 days later, her murdered body was found in a shallow grave near a highway exit 35 miles away. She had been bludgeoned to death with a blunt object, and detectives were eager to speak with her manager, James Duffy, and the deli's owner, 53-year-old Georgios Kakavelos, who were the last known people to see her alive, but neither of the men seemed to want anything to do with law enforcement, which only piqued investigators' suspicions further. But the police refused to back down in their quest for information and soon discovered that Lamont had reported Kakavelos to the state labor board because he owed her $300. To many, if not most people, it's hardly an amount worth ending a human life over, but Kakavelos reportedly had a reputation for being greedy and self-centered. Additionally, Lamont had accused Kakavelos of other legal violations, including routinely paying his employees late, and she was planning on exposing his shady business practices on social media and to his wife. At the time of her death, further investigation turned up evidence that Kakavelos had paid Duffy $1,100 to help him kill and dispose of Lamont. Duffy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. He admitted to killing Lamont but received leniency in exchange for his testimony against Kakavelos, who was found guilty in 2021 of first-degree murder, conspiracy, concealing a human corpse, and tampering with physical evidence. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 7. Daniel Bezemer. 17-year-old Justine van der Schoot met her untimely fate on Labor Day Monday in 2003 when she was burned alive in Placer County, California by her boyfriend, 18-year-old Daniel Bezemer, and his best friend, 21-year-old Brandon Fernandez. The teen couple had just left after eating dinner at the van der Schoot family's home when they met up with Fernandez and rode into the woods in his car. By then, Bezemer and Fernandez had already planned van der Schoot's murder. Bezemer strangled her to death, and the men tossed her body into a pre-dug grave where they doused her with alcohol and set her on fire. An autopsy would later reveal that van der Schoot was still breathing when she was set ablaze, and she had also possibly been buried alive. Prosecutors described Bezemer as a jealous type with control issues. Both men confessed to their roles in van der Schoot's death, and in 2005, Bezemer was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life, while Fernandez received a minimum 15-year term for second-degree murder. They have both since become eligible for parole, but have been denied at every hearing thus far. Bezemer faces his next parole hearing in 2028, while Fernandez is scheduled to go before the parole board in 2027. Number 6. Kimberly Suzanna Dolan. Shortly before 9 p.m. on a Monday evening in September 2019, police responded to an emergency at an apartment complex in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, where a 50-year-old woman and her 2 adult daughters were found suffering from stab wounds. The trio told police that they had been victimized in a knife attack at the hands of 21-year-old Kimberly Suzanna Dolan, following an argument about a fire alarm. A quick-thinking bystander stopped the assault by knocking the knife out of Dolan's hand, and all 3 victims survived. Dolan was charged with 3 counts each of aggravated assault, simple assault, and recklessly endangering. While the outcome of the case is unclear, records show that this was hardly the young woman's first brush with the law. Just 2 years earlier, Dolan had been arrested on an outstanding warrant for attempted homicide for allegedly mowing a woman down with her car. She was out on parole at the time of the stabbing after serving part of an 11.5 to 23-month prison sentence for her previous crimes. Number 5. Abbi Bischoff. 20-year-old Abbi Bischoff died in a tragic car accident on August 21, 2023 after moving to Florida to begin a new chapter of her life. She had relocated from Idaho with help from her best friend, Sky Hackman, who was scheduled to fly back home after spending a few days in the Sunshine State. During the drive to the airport, a 76-year-old woman rammed into the girl's vehicle at a red light with her Jeep while going 60 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone. Bischoff died from her injuries at the scene, while Hackman narrowly survived after sustaining severe injuries. Shortly before the deadly crash, police had received a call about the driver who reportedly suffered from dementia. Prosecutors declined to pursue charges against the senior citizen after classifying the collision as an accident resulting from a medical event. Hackman and Bischoff's mother have since made it their mission to persuade lawmakers to do more to prevent people with dementia from driving dangerously, including stopping them from getting behind the wheel altogether, if their condition prevents them from being able to safely operate a motor vehicle. Number 4. Garry Jenkins. During the summer of 2018, 56-year-old Garry Newman Jenkins was charged with murder for killing his 79-year-old mother, Vertie Hamilton, at their home in Fort Worth, Texas. Police were alerted to the crime after a neighbor discovered Hamilton's body face down in her front entryway with a knife lodged into the back of her neck. Jenkins already had a violent past and was on parole for a prior aggravated assault conviction at the time of Hamilton's death. It certainly didn't help that he committed the killing while high on PCP, which is infamous for its tendency to cause erratic and aggressive behavior. Law enforcement tracked his ankle monitor to a local bus station where they picked him up on a parole violation charge. Jenkins reportedly confessed to killing Hamilton and was subsequently charged with murder. During a jailhouse interview with local news station KTRK, he said he was hallucinating at the time of the incident. He blamed PCP entirely for his actions, insisting that he wasn't the monster that he felt the media was depicting him as. This claim was supported by Garry's brother AJ, who told KTRK that his brother was not a monster, adding, "That would be giving him way too much credit. He's an idiot." Jenkins pleaded guilty to murder in 2019 and was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Number 3. Lynn and Barry Collett. Newlywed British couple Lynn and Barry Collett mysteriously disappeared while honeymooning in North Yorkshire, England, on a Monday in August of 1998. The pair were last seen walking along a part of the river wharf known as the Strid, which has a reputation of killing anyone who dares to enter it. Lynn's body was found downstream nearly a week later, while Barry's remains remained undiscovered until nearly 2 months after the couple vanished. They had both been swept away by the Strid's seemingly tranquil waters, which rose by 5 feet in less than a minute and suddenly became turbulent amid heavy rainfall. Recorded fatalities at the Strid date at least as far back as 1934, when an artist was swallowed by the quickly rising waters while painting with watercolors beside the river. But the tragedies are rumored to date back to the 12th century, and legend holds that the unassuming body of water has a 100% mortality rate. According to researchers, the Strid is a 200 feet deep, narrow rock pathway which essentially turns the river on its side and creates powerful hidden currents. Visitors are cautioned against getting too close to the water, where just one misstep on a slippery rock can mean the difference between life and death. Today's topic was requested by Nikki123BXD and Hello Girl 281. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comment section below. Number 2. Alyssa Lokits. 34-year-old Alyssa Lokits left her Nashville, Tennessee home to go for a routine jog on Monday, October 14th, 2024, and never returned. It quickly became clear to witnesses that something terrible was happening when they overheard the woman screaming for help. But by the time anyone found Lokits along the Mill Creek Greenway, she had been permanently silenced. With gunshot wounds to the head, she was still clinging to life when she was rushed to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where she died from her injuries. According to police, 29-year-old Paul Park of Brentwood began following Lokits during her run and then dragged her into the woods and attempted to assault her. Witnesses described seeing the accused killer returning to his car with blood on his clothes shortly after gunshots broke out. Park was indicted on several charges, including first-degree murder, in January 2025 and remains in custody without bail as he awaits the next steps in his case. Number 1. Joel Pringle. Australian father of 2 and social media influencer Joel Pringle vanished in Queensland's Whitsundays region on a Monday afternoon in August 2024, after being last seen at his Cannon Vale home around 4:30 p.m. The 40-year-old graphic designer's vehicle also went missing, and his whereabouts and fate remained a mystery until a month later, when he was found dead under circumstances that have been kept from the public. Authorities only revealed that no foul play was suspected in Pringle's death, while news articles hinted at the possibility of mental health struggles and encouraged readers who were feeling down to reach out for help. Thanks for watching. Would you be open to working a full day every Sunday in addition to your current hours in exchange for a 25% increase in pay? Let us know in the comment section below.